The President of the United States of America yesterday posted on social media, you know, he does communicate through social media, realizing that the bloc was able to come up with a communique and a united statement on issues of trade imbalances. He has threatened to impose tariffs on BRICS member states and also those countries that will support policies of BRICS. And we know that on the 9th of July, America was supposed to take a decision on implementation of the executive order the president in the US signed on tariffs. What is your reaction with this kind of approach where the US is saying we are going to deal with you?
We can start, sir.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. We've had a really successful BRICS summit here in Brazil. President Lula, President of the Republic of Brazil, organized this summit rather excellently. And we also appreciated the fact that they invited other outreach countries to be part of this. And we keenly observed and appreciated the interest that is growing around the world, particularly in the global south, towards BRICS. We admitted a new member in BRICS, Indonesia, and we also admitted new BRICS partner countries. There is a lot of interest in the global south about being part of BRICS, which shows that BRICS continues to grow its voice, its reach, and by importance as well. It's become a fairly sizable BRICS community, which already accounts for more than half of the population of the world, more than a third, closer to 40% of the GDP of the world. That is a sizable community that continues to grow. So we appreciated that. We also appreciated the fact that through BRICS we continue by respect, by recognition, to respect the sovereignty of countries and their equality, so we are all equal, and that is an important consideration, because that leads to us cooperating on a number of areas. And indeed, through the declaration that was adopted, we covered a number of areas ranging from the governance of the world right through to issues like technical education. And on global governance, we continued to respect the existence and the standing of the United Nations, as well as to call for the reform of the United Nations structures, especially the Security Council, by ensuring that it becomes more representative. We observe that it is not acceptable that huge countries such as India, such as Brazil, are excluded from participating meaningfully. But more importantly for us, that the African continent, which has 1.3 billion people, is not represented in the United Nations Security Council. And we said that we should continue insisting, and we were rather pleased that there is agreement on the reform of the UN Security Council, even amongst those members of BRICS who are members of the Security Council. And we looked at a number of other important issues, such as climate change, that we need to ensure that the commitments that have been made with regard to climate change, particularly assisting and supporting countries that are most affected by climate change, which happen to be countries in the global south, countries that had very little responsibility for the climate damage that the world is going through now, should be assisted and supported through their transition to renewable energies, and that the countries that have made commitments, particularly in the global north, should live up to their commitments with regard to ensuring that we address the climate challenges that we are facing in the world. And so BRICS also dealt with a variety of issues, security matters, and on security matters, we collectively condemned the attack on countries such as Iran, which was done unilaterally, and continued to call for a ceasefire in Gaza so that the slaughter and the genocide of the Palestinians should be stopped. We also took time to look at what is happening in Sudan, the catastrophe that is unfolding there with people becoming displaced and many people dying. So that too was dealt with, and BRICS insisted that when it comes to our continent, African conflicts must be resolved through African solutions. And we were rather pleased that we also dealt with key issues such as how our critical minerals that come from largely African countries should be treated, that there should be beneficiation and there should be value addition. And this, we as South Africa and Brazil articulated very strongly during the summit. So the summit in large measure was a successful one, and to have a summit of this size adopting a declaration just goes to prove the success thereof. And there were no dissensions, and we are particularly pleased with that. So it's a community of countries that want to see progress in the world, that want to see a fair and equitable world where people of the world are treated fairly and equitably. And we also dealt with the issue of people-to-people contact, that the people in BRICS countries should be given the opportunity to be in contact with each other. So on that score and many other issues that were covered, BRICS, Rio de Janeiro was very successful. So we leave with very fulfilled hearts, because it has added to many issues that will lead to the development of our world. There was also great appreciation and support for South Africa's coming G20, and in recognizing the importance of G20, that it encompasses so many countries in the world. We were wished great success, and we were greatly supported. And so as we depart, many countries said, bon voyage, we will see you in November in Johannesburg. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. Can I go home now?
No, Mr. President. Mr. President, on the issue of BRICS, let's start with BRICS before getting on other issues at home. The President of the United States of America yesterday posted on social media, you know, he does communicate through social media, realizing that the bloc was able to come up with a communique and a united statement on issues of trade imbalances. He has threatened to impose tariffs on BRICS member states and also those countries that will support policies of BRICS. And we know that on the 9th of July, America was supposed to take a decision on implementation of the executive order the president in the US signed on tariffs. What is your reaction with this kind of approach where the US is saying we are going to deal with you? And the second question, Mr. President, at home there's a challenge of issues related to the police. The commissioner of the police in KwaZulu-Natal, General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, yesterday addressed the media and South Africans about the division and alleged corruption within the police service, and he made damning allegations against the hierarchy of police, including the Minister of Police. Were you aware that he was going to do that? But secondly, South Africans are saying action now, not tomorrow.
Well, I became aware of what President Trump tweeted, and I think there needs to be greater appreciation of the emergence of various centers of power in the world, as the declaration observed. And this should be seen in positive light rather than in a negative light. It should be seen as improving the governance of the world and enhancing good processes and policies that should help the development of humanity as a whole. So BRICS is such a center of power. And BRICS does not seek to compete with any other power. It recognizes the importance and the standing of other centers of power. It recognizes the standing of the United Nations and respects that, and subjects itself to the decisions of the United Nations. And it also recognizes the standing of a body like the G20. And so these powers should be seen as complementary, as advancing the interests of people. And so when a declaration, a beautiful declaration like the one that we adopted, should be seen in that it is beautiful and it is aimed at enhancing the interests of people globally. So there should never be vengeance, there should never be retribution against countries that are seeking to cooperate together and to advance the interests of humanity. There is nothing negative in the declaration, and there is everything about advancing the interests of various countries in the world, if not all, and the interests of people in the world, so that we leave no one behind. So it is really disappointing that when there is such a very positive collective manifestation such as BRICS, there should be others who see it in negative light and want to punish those who participate in this. It cannot be and should not be. We should be respecting the sovereignty of countries. We should be respecting that we are all equal, that all we should be focusing on is enhancing the prosperity of humanity in all countries. It cannot be that might should now be right, where in the end those who are more powerful are the ones who seek to have vengeance against those who are seeking to do good in the world. On the issue of the announcement, or better still, what the Police Commissioner of KZN, General Mkhwanazi, said, I was not aware of it, that it was coming, and obviously it is a matter that I will be dealing with when I get home. I will need to look at it more closely and have a thoroughgoing discussion with a number of people, and thereafter there will be a clear way forward. This is not a matter that we should not give attention to. It is a serious matter. It has to do with the security of our people, but it also has to do with our adherence to the rule of law. The police play a critical role in enhancing the rule of law, the safety of South Africans, and that those who have done wrong should be dealt with, and should be dealt with thoroughly in terms of our constitution and our laws. So this matter is going to be addressed.
Thank you for time, and condolences on the passing of former DPO.
Yes.
Maybe just the first one on this push to reform global institutions, particularly the Security Council. It's happening at a time where we're seeing very powerful nations pushing back, resisting, even participating in those multilateral institutions. And so I wonder how you reconcile the two. Second to that, the tariff deadline that is looming comes on Wednesday. It's unlikely that South Africa would have reached a deal by Wednesday. How do you plan on mitigating that, given the impact that the 31% would have on South Africa's economy?
On the issue of the looming deadline with regard to what President Trump announced, as South Africa, when we went to the White House, we started a process of engagement. And that process continues. The Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition continues to engage with his counterpart in the United States. And I am hopeful that we will be able to reach an understanding. We've made a clear proposal and offer to them, and they are examining that, and they will come back to us. Whether they are able to do so before Wednesday or soon after Wednesday, we will see. But everything is negotiable. And even timelines that are set are often either negotiable or stretched. So we are hoping for the very best when it comes to that. When it comes to the reform of the institutions, the global institutions such as the Security Council, we in the Global South, and particularly ourselves in Africa, we evolved a very clear position. The Ezulwini consensus is really the framework that set us on a path of calling for the reform of the United Nations, particularly the Security Council. Now, that gave us a platform, that gave us a message and made our intention clear. And when we started, it was like we were whistling in the wilderness. It seemed like we were the only ones in the whole world who saw the need for the reform of the United Nations Security Council. The voices that support our framework have been rising and gathering momentum. And even those who did not even want to discuss the matter have now realized the importance and the efficacy of what we seek to achieve. So we're gaining more traction, we're gaining more attention, and the message is sinking in that the United Nations Security Council, which was set up as the United Nations was set up 80 years ago, cannot continue being the preferred governance system in the world, in a world that has changed. Because 80 years ago, the world was completely different from what it is today. The world is now driven by principles of good governance, is driven by principles of equality, recognition of each country's existence, of the sovereignty of nations, and it is also recognized by the drive for equality, that there should be equitable treatment of all nations. 80 years ago, that was not even thought of, but today, as I said, a number of countries are surging to the fore, and that is a good thing. That needs to be accepted. It needs to be embraced, that the world is becoming more and more diverse, but it is also becoming more and more united in many, many ways. So those who dissent from the unity and collective action that is being forged by many countries and global centers, which we all must embrace, are defining themselves out of history. And history will catch up with them, because this moment, which is now driven by digital transformation, artificial intelligence, democratic rule throughout many countries, requires that there should be good governance at a global level. And it should be good governance that enhances the lives of people around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Can I
Colleagues?
go home now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You have a flight to catch. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you.
You ever watch an international summit and think, okay, now that's how you hold a room? Because that's exactly what President Cyril Ramaphosa did at the 17 BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro. This wasn't just another diplomatic wrap-up, it was a masterclass in leadership, diplomacy, and straight-talking global politics. And yes, he went there, calling out the United Nations and firing back at US tariff threats with the calm confidence of a leader who knows his worth. So picture this, the BRICS Summit is wrapping up, the media's buzzing, and every camera is on Ramaphosa. And right out the gate, he doesn't mince words. He dives straight into the issue of global inequality and the imbalance of power at the United Nations. Ramaphosa says what many nations have been whispering for years: the current UN structure doesn't reflect the reality of today's world. A handful of powerful nations still dominate the Security Council, while the global South gets the crumbs. South Africa, he says, is no longer content with symbolic roles. It wants influence, real influence. He calls it out, plainly. The world has changed, but the power dynamics haven't. Africa remains underrepresented, Latin America remains underrepresented, and meanwhile, the same countries that lecture others about democracy are clinging to power structures built in the 1940s. Ramaphosa's tone is measured, but the message is thunderous. The status quo is outdated, and BRICS isn't here to play along anymore. Then he shifts gears and aims straight at US trade threats. In recent weeks, Washington had been rattling its saber about tariffs on countries that don't toe the line. South Africa was one of them. Ramaphosa doesn't blink. Instead, he addresses it head-on. South Africa will not be bullied into submission, he says. We are open to fair trade, but we will not compromise our sovereignty to avoid tariff threats. Boom. He explains that South Africa, like many other BRICS countries, is pushing for a more equitable global trade system. Not one where rules are written by a few and enforced on everyone else, but a system where every country has a say. He talks about strengthening intra-BRICS trade, building new supply chains, and relying less on Western-dominated financial systems. He even mentions moving forward with local currency trade, a nod to de-dollarization that had the room humming. But here's the part that really lands. Ramaphosa isn't angry, he isn't dramatic, he's focused. He says South Africa wants strong global relationships, including with the US, but it won't sacrifice dignity or independence. He talks about cooperation, not conflict. Engagement, not obedience. And that's why it hits so hard, because it comes from a place of conviction, not confrontation. Throughout the wrap interview, he weaves in South Africa's priorities: renewable energy investment, infrastructure development, digital transformation. He says the BRICS partnership must be a tool for real development, not just talk shops. And he challenges his fellow leaders: if we want a better world, we have to build it ourselves. And you can tell, it's not just talk. Ramaphosa's comments reflect a wider shift happening globally. The days of smaller countries waiting for approval from the West are over. The global South is rising, finding its voice, and taking its place at the table. The wrap ends with Ramaphosa speaking on unity. Not the kind built on sameness, but on shared goals. BRICS is diverse, economically, politically, and culturally. But that diversity, he says, is its strength. The more voices at the table, the better the solutions. The more perspectives, the more resilient the future. As the lights dim on the Rio summit, one thing's clear. President Ramaphosa didn't just wrap up South Africa's involvement, he redefined it. With clarity, courage, and quiet strength, he made it known: South Africa is not a junior partner on the global stage. It's a leader, a builder, a nation with a voice that will be heard. And judging by the global reaction, that voice just got a whole lot louder.